that all of you doing great. Well, there are a lot of arguments regarding probably Bitcoin doesn't have any intrinsic value. Well, you can produce 21 million of anything and say, okay, this is a rare asset and it is so much valuable. Well, the moment that you find out who's Satoshi Nakamoto, the one who created Bitcoin, you will see the value plunge down to anything. We have had so much of the crashes from the Bitcoin's evolution, 80% crash, 90% crash, and then Bitcoin reviving back. In this video, we are going to discover how the Bitcoin actually evolved, and then we are going to compare with the money, with the current money system and the history of money system of the humans. So how does Bitcoin actually is on the path to a greater success? And so far it has been successful, as well as probably the flaws within the Bitcoin, so that all the crypto people should know what is the inside story, or what are the things that we need to know about the Bitcoin. So first point would be, what is the history of money in brief and the problems faced with it? Well, the history of money, earlier we all have heard of the barter system, where you exchange one goods and you receive back the other goods. The problem with that was that there was no measure of how much of a certain thing that you give. Let's say you just want a piece of a toothbrush, and you are having a lot of other goods, probably let's say goat, you're having gold, biscuits, you have so much of the things. So what is the exact thing that you give to the other person so that you can get a piece of toothbrush? I'm just giving an example. And then even let's say you measure the value, how do you fractionalize it? Do you break the respective thing into the pieces? So it was quite a problematic for the people. So human beings evolved their currency system to something that has an intrinsic value and which can be accepted as a currency. Then it was evolved for the gold and silver coins were used because it had the intrinsic value, and that was used to arrange for the respective transaction. But then over a period of time, again, this became a problem. Why? Because how do you actually fractionalize those gold and silver, and then the amount of gold and silver carried by the people and exchanging for the respective goods and probably measuring every time. So human beings over a period of time, like long story short, evolved this system where the gold reserve, like it was assumed that the government or the banks are going to issue you some piece of paper, piece of note, and then it is going to be a promise for you that this piece of paper is equivalent to amount of gold that is kept within the reserve. So every time you have a piece of paper known as the currency, you are having equivalent amount of gold deposited, and you can use that piece of paper currency to buy the value and the goods. And over the period of time, this concept became flawed, and you can no longer exchange this fiat currency with the gold, because the gold reserves, nobody goes out there in the bank and claims for their gold reserves. So what happened? Now the fiat currency system is applied, so government can print as much money as they can, which is one of the biggest problem, the inflation problem. And then inter-country, like currency of one country and the currency of other country, there is a rate difference, but then amount of currency that one country produces and the other country does not produce, or produces more or less, all that keeping in check was also the problem. And then the digital transactions also had this problem, that you can not actually have the transaction to be made via sending one thing to the other and that thing physically leaving, because obviously that's what the digital transaction is. And you have the problem of double spending, where you can copy, let's say I copy one transaction multiple times. So even if I do not have the money, I can do the transaction, fake the transaction many times. So to solve this problem, the reserves were saved within the different banks. So all that problem, for the first time in history with the Bitcoin evolution, this was possible, that okay, something can be fractionalized as low as possible. Bitcoin can be sent even $1 or $1 billion, and that particular thing can literally leave from one place to the other digitally, without, if one wallet is actually sending some amount of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is deducted from that wallet and it is leaving and sent to the other person. And it does not has to be physical, it can be traveled, it can be sent from one part of the world to the other part of the world. And again, it is even solving the inflation problem. There can only be 21 million Bitcoin. So that is how the Bitcoin gained the attention of the people. And initially, as we all know, the first Bitcoin was sold like 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas, which is worth right now 10,000 Bitcoin, probably $300-400 million. Now, the next point would be the money or beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Some people might say, okay, what if I launch something, 21 million of something, and then why not? It is valuable. There comes the answer that you try to launch it, not many people will adopt it. Bitcoin was launched, and then over a period of time, it went through so much of the crashes. But here we are, countries adopting, some of the countries like El Salvador adopting it as a legal tender. BlackRock, the $10 trillion asset manager, opening private trust for the Bitcoin. Millions of people around the world holding the Bitcoin, having the eyes on the Bitcoin. So when the mass adoption is happening for something, I mean, you cannot stop an idea that has got its time. So that is how the Bitcoin's value is derived. Now, Bitcoin already had passed this test of time a lot of times. Why? Because 2011, like from 2010 to 2011, for the first time Bitcoin touched $1 mark, and then it crashed brutally. 2013, for the first time it touched $100 mark, and then again it crashed brutally, like 70 to 80% to 90% down. And then 2017, it reached $19,000. Everyone was amazed, and then brutally crashed to $3,000, and everyone is like, okay, Bitcoin is going to zero. And here we are, 2021, it went $69,000 again. So every time the brutal crash, Bitcoin has bounced back, and the rate of adoption has consistently been growing. So that is how it has always been able to pass the test of time so far, and especially the intrinsic usage of the Bitcoin in the future. Now, there is a loophole within the decentralization concept. Some people say, okay, Bitcoin is 100% decentralized. Well, yes, to an extent it is decentralized, because nobody specifically can control the price of the Bitcoin. The whole world is owning it and doing the transaction, and you can see a number of addresses holding the Bitcoin. But then you never know, probably one person who's holding a lot of Bitcoin has divided into several addresses the number of Bitcoin. Let's say after a certain price inflation, like the price goes to a certain level, he might be selling all those addresses. So when we are talking about the decentralization, that could be one of the loophole. Like, it is not 100%. And then even for the mining, the hash power or the computational power is actually controlled by the big organization. So the moment that they want, they can even do some of the fraud while trying to mine. There are some of the things that can be done when in majority people can actually do that. Like the majority of miners are deciding to do that fraud. But the moment that they do the fraud, they understand the value of the Bitcoin will reduce significantly, causing themselves the loss. So they may ensure that everything is done honestly. Now, the last but not the least point, the bad actors and the limitations. Some of the bad actors would want to hack the Bitcoin network, would want to duplicate the transaction, would want to do something bad related with the transactions of the Bitcoin. Guess what? There is this mechanism within the Bitcoin, like the majority of other miners may exclude that transaction the moment that they realize this is a bad actor trying to do some sort of duplication or some sort of illegal or fraud sort of a thing during creation of the block, and they might even exclude that miner itself. So due to that, the bad actors are even kept in check, and that is how one of the most secure network Bitcoin is called. Having said that, all these factors combined, again, the saying goes, you cannot stop the idea whose time has come. That is how Bitcoin has gone through all the tests and so much of the criticism throughout the world. And here we are, the whole world is talking about the Bitcoin. The presidents of the countries are talking about the Bitcoin. The thing that started as 10,000 Bitcoin anonymously sold for 2 pizzas, right now the countries are adopting it as a legal tender, and the epitome of success of Bitcoin would be the moment it is declared as world currency. And the moment it is declared as world currency, probably it will be pretty much unaffordable. We are talking in millions of values of the Bitcoin. So that's it, guys, for the video. I hope that you liked it. Again, if you have not subscribed to our channel, please ensure that you hit the subscribe button. This channel will be everything about how do we grow your finances. That's what the goal of this channel is, to provide financial freedom to all of our subscribers. Comment down below for what you feel about the Bitcoin, decentralization, and all the other aspects. And smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.